Futures. Stories of Future Fiction by Júlia Rosell Saldaña. Of the water. At the height of human civilizations, the greatest good required by every living thing on the planet began to become scarce. Humanity, far from coming, together to solve the problem, drifted even further apart. Bloody wars that spread fire over the entire surface of the earth further aggravated the problem. Droughts and lack of food began to take their toll not only on large armies, but also on the civilian population. Overpopulation only succeeded in opening fronts within and without the limits of those communities which encompassed millions of souls and those virtues, which every great civilization possessed, now seemed pasture for the flames and a savagery more typical of rabid animals. Within a few moons, the cities were nothing more than ancient bastions of solitude, while most of the population longed to feed on the surplus that the world offered. During this chaos, greedy and eager minds to solve the problem tried to use every means at their disposal, taking advantage of what was left of the times when night could turn into day. They tried to create machines to generate this elemental liquid. It wasn't until many moons later when, in the cold north of the Western continent, two scientists from the northern lineage of the ancient continent created the machine that ended the drought era. Fueled by the energy of 1,000 suns and cooled by the corrupted water of the sea, it powered up. Clouds such as had not been seen in generations clouded the sun from the length of the mother sphere, and when the first drops of water fell, those people who had been killing and dying in an endless cycle gave up the fight. The descendants of the survivors of those corrupt governments and those great, immoral and hypocritical communities wept for joy. They had forgotten the quarrels and wars to finally embrace each other and rebuild all that was lost in the age of drought. Humanity was immersed in a joy that seemed to have no end, but some individuals in that world dragged through the pain despite the good news. The rains continued, even in areas that were not known beyond the stories of yesteryear. Months later, when the machine had fulfilled its purpose and its creators lay in their graves, they tried to turn it off. Some of the believing men and women of the one sabotaged the invention, turning it into an infernal machine that continued beyond its making. With the energy of 1,000 suns feeding it, it seemed to work only to fulfill the task of flooding the earth, as in the stories of previous humanity. It did not take long to see that the great flood was coming, but now no people on earth had the methods or the fortitude to prepare for it. Those hundreds of millions of souls still remaining on the mother sphere watched horribly as the sea rose day after day without pause, at a rate far greater than the melting of glass before. Another war broke out again between brothers and sisters, in which weapons, made in this interlude between the end of the drought era and the Great Flood, were used. Seeing the effectiveness of the energy of 1,000 suns, it was applied for almost all the purposes of humanity. And as it tends to happen, war is nourished by the most effective. From every large village, mushrooms of fire and smoke could be seen everywhere, while the poor people tried to flee, both from these and from the pursuit of the sea. There were few places in the world high enough to be saved, and it was precisely in them that every human wanted to take refuge. At this point, few stories and few epics remain that narrate this time, since the isolation of the people as well as the conflicts did not give rise to leave testimony for future generations. It is only known from that time that the weapons of the time and the huge amount of water caused many humans to become different. Legends tell of new creatures in the infinite sea that do not invite you to set foot there, let alone explore them. Now, a long time later, we spread out into islands large and small along the mother sphere, surviving, leaving a new footnote in history. Marissa closed the thick covers of the book, made of leather. Ya, you always tell me the same story. Why don't you tell us another? Story? Mick said with euphoria. Mick, my grandson, now what you have to do is sleep. This story is before my grandmother's grandmother, and you must always remember it. He carried the head of his little grandson and kissed his forehead. You must go to sleep now, otherwise you will not have a good time with your father in the fields tomorrow. Yo, badabu! He was interrupted by his grandmother. To sleep. I will tell you other stories tomorrow. Marissa got up after tucking Mick in and left the room, closing the door. He went to the castle window to see far, thanks to the light of the full moon. From the window of that great castle, you could see the nearest town with just over 100 souls counted, and the hills that flowed into the sea just over. 3 kilometers away. As was typical of his age, back pains made him give up on staying at the window, and he carefully descended the stone steps to the parlour where his daughter and son-in-law were. The light from the candles was dim but effective as he reached the living room. He could clearly see the light from the fireplace, which kept the living room lit. Marissa's daughter was sitting on her husband's lap, in a wooden chair in front of the fireplace. Next to it, a small table supported the weight of a jug of liquor that was dwindling with time. Will you accompany me to the table? He said with a trembling voice to both. Of them? He slowly approached the head of the table where a chair that mixed wood and forged metal stood imposingly. The table could seat up to 12 people, although there were only 11 chairs, as there were no chairs at the other end. Of the table. Her daughter and son-in-law soon changed their attitudes, putting aside their incipient drunkenness and entourage rituals to accommodate the matriarch of the family. Once she was settled, the daughter poured her the onion liqueur they were drinking, while the son-in-law went to the pantry to get some goat cheese. When they had served her, they sat down next to her. Mother, have you told yourself the story of the old world again? Of course, Marion. You know as well as I do that this story must not be forgotten. He made gestures of enjoying the liquor and the cheese. It's still lucky that apart from being tender, your husband knows how to make good. Cheese and good liquor. I could already see myself eating the sour compote your brother makes for life. Marion and her husband looked at each other, smiled, and looked at Marissa. Mother, Vincenzo and I have good news, Marion said. If you're going to have another child, you don't need to tell me, I already know. Marissa said while laughing. How could Marissa know? Vincenzo said, surprised. I remind you, son-in-law of my heart, that I have had 12 children. Throughout my life, 5 of whom live in this castle, and I have also been with my daughters during their pregnancies and births. He continued to laugh. As you will understand, there is not much to hide with how little your beloved eats when she seems to be gaining weight with each passing day. Marissa is right. Her wisdom is always up to date. Vincenzo served him more onion liqueur. The rest of the night was quiet like any other, and after the meeting they all went to Morpheus's world. The world was set in motion with the first crowing of the village roosters at the foot of the castle. Those good people prepared for another day at their jobs, and in a few minutes, the silence before sunrise turned into a bustling and noisy coming and going of people and animals. In the castle, they went at a slightly different pace, since being the matriarchs. Family, they could afford to have a leisurely breakfast before going out to do their activities. It didn't take long for Vincenzo and his brothers-in-law to prepare the carriages, in which they carried all the necessary tools, well-groomed and stocky horses, were ready to take them to their destinations on the island. Marion and her sisters and sisters-in-law, on the other hand, were preparing to take care of their mother, the children who could not yet go with their parents, and others were preparing everything necessary to teach the children of the villagers. Education was of utmost importance in that small society, and it was the job of the matriarch's family to pass on knowledge to the next generations. Despite the rudimentary tools, some old-world books and concepts still remained which were guarded, protected and copied into more durable formats, when possible. Child labour was necessary on that island, but every effort was made to give them time to learn. Thus, concepts of chemistry, biology, mathematics, engineering, health, social sciences, writing and reading were taught, and creativity was fostered in these young minds. Instead of rewarding an educational system based on homogeneity and repetition, every effort was made to make each child feel comfortable in one or more fields, thus helping their families more than once with occurrences than those that had not fallen in previous generations. The island progressed generation after generation, and it was not uncommon to see houses in that town that mixed various materials, or that it was noticeable that they had undergone changes to make them more stable over the years. As the village went back to its routine, Meek was riding in the back of his father's carriage. He loved the subtraction of the slow ride from the cart over rudimentary dirt roads to the fields in the most fertile part of the island. Along the way they met those who were walking, always with a smile on their faces. One even approached the cart where Mick was riding and gave him while stroking his head a toy in the shape of a cat made with hemp. Both Meek and Vincenzo thanked him. The boy was happy to have a new toy. The day passed peacefully in the fields, while the cattle seemed happy to have freedom in their own space. The hours passed as if it were a short time while those workers took their breaks and continued with their work. It was a few hours after the sun was at its highest point that one of the workers dropped his hoe, remaining silent for a few seconds, and began to point in the direction of the great sea. "A stranger! A stranger!" he screamed. In the direction he was pointing, a small barge with an occupant rowing like there was no tomorrow was approaching. He didn't seem to realize that he was about to hit the sand on the shore. Indeed, the crash was abrupt, and that stranger took some time to stop paddling, despite being on the ground. When he realized, he threw away the oars and jumped ashore. Like a soul carrying the devil, he ran towards the workers, raised his arms and let go. "The Kaigu! The Kaigu have come!" His movements were slow, and it was difficult for him to run. He was too tired, and despite this, he used his energy wherever he could. "My house, my town, my family, all dead, all dead!" He fell to his knees when he finished speaking, began to cry, and covered his face with his hands. All the workers left their work and ran to help the poor man, surprised that someone had come across the sea to his little island. They gave the poor man water and food, already too weak to utter a word. Vincenzo took him to the cart and told Mick to stand by. He was taken as quickly as possible to the castle. The rest of the people went back to work, still surprised, even more worried. It didn't take them long to reach their destination, and there was Marissa waiting for them. He carried a skin canteen, and he made the newcomer drink from it. "This will sit you well and calm you down. Take him into the drawing room. He has a bed ready by the fire," said Marissa, more serious than usual. Everyone present followed the matriarch's orders and took that stranger to the bed in front of the fire. One of the daughters dedicated herself to putting wet cloths on his forehead to bring down his fever. Marissa had a chair placed next to the bed and sat down. He waited patiently for the stranger to regain consciousness. It was night outside, and that stranger finally woke up. "Who are you, and where do you come from?" asked Marissa with a serious look fixed on the stranger. My name is Eric," he said with a tired voice. "I come from Scotsland." "How long did it take you to get there?" continued the matriarch. 3 days and 3 nights. I thought I would die in the cold waters of the sea, or be devoured by one of the monsters that roam it." Calm down, I won't let you die. He made him drink a green concoction in a wooden cup. Drink this, it will make you feel good. You'll be as good as new in. No time. Do you remember what brought you here? Eric spat out the mess and changed his tired face to one of concern. He forced his eyes open. The Kaigu, he said with a trembling voice. What? Asked Marissa. The Kaigus, they came. He breathed deeply. They appeared when the sun was starting to fall. They came out of the water like nothing, moving slowly. A horde that seemed to have no end. Some tried to stop them, others fled to other towns. I seeing the ease with which they killed my people. I decided to run. Away. He cried again, tired as he was, the sobs denoting that his exhaustion was still going on. So the Kaigu, the stories are true. Marissa seemed concentrated in thought. What are the Kaigus, mother? Asked the present daughter. The Kaigu are those who lost their humanity in the war during the Great Flood. Weapons made from the energy of 1,000 suns not only wreaked havoc on the world, but also on plants, people and animals. And how do you know, mother? Asked the daughter. Just wait. He turned his head in the direction of the stairs. Vincenzo, bring me the green cover book from the library. Run! After a while, Vincenzo appeared running up the stairs, and after a few minutes, he went down them even faster with the requested book. Here is Marissa. He panted in a hurry. Thanks, said Marissa. Marissa opened that thick book and went straight to a page written in blood red. Here. He pointed to the lines with his finger and began to read. It was a beautiful autumn day. The rainbows were already portending in the sky. That something strange would happen. And it did. This year had already been. Strange as it seemed that the water in the Great Sea had dropped a little more than 2 meters. At dusk, several day labourers came running back with what looked like a woman in their arms. They said he had walked out of the sea and was walking slowly until he collapsed, that being no longer seemed human, and panted in dreams as if it was difficult to breathe. It was definitely a woman, and she was taken to the castle to be cared for. I, Christina, matriarch of the island, devoted myself body and soul to healing that creature. I spent 2 days and a night carefully until at the end of the 2nd day, the full moon came in through the window, and that woman woke up. One of my sons, accustomed to fight in conflicts and familiar with the use of weapons, protected me, watching over me, and his services were required. Without delay, the woman on waking immediately got up and tried to surround my neck with my hands. My son caught her and stopped her with an effort, because that woman, despite her thinness and strange hanging skin, had a lot of strength. He had to tie her to a chair. Because of her aggression and violence, I had to sedate her with my herbs, and I took advantage of this sedation to try to speak. The woman resisted at first, but told me that she was one of the true survivors of humanity. She told me that she and hers lived underwater, hoping to increase their numbers to get revenge on those who wouldn't let them live on land. At a first, she had come to explore. He was sent away as she was sick and no longer useful to her village. He further explained that there would soon be enough to come to our island. That they were a highly hierarchical society based on strength, and that their leaders could communicate with each other across the Great Sea. He told me little more before he coughed up blood and ended up dying at a speed I had never seen before. I leave this story recorded in the Book of the Matriarchs for the use of future generations. Autumn Day 26 of the year AIX. When he finished reading the page, the hall was silent for long minutes. Mick, who was hiding behind the pantry door, started crying, clearly scared. Marissa left the book on the big table and went to calm Meek as best she could. Once he calmed down a little, he had one of his daughters take him to his room to sleep. Eric, Were you going specifically to this island? Marisa said as she sat down, again in the chair next to the bed. No, there are rumours that there is a large island 5 days east of here. I already told him that I expected to die at sea as I deviated from the route. On my island. We trade with other islands, but no one had ever found this small lost island. He did not know the existence of more islands. At first, no one left and no one came because of the great sea beasts. Marisa yawned. By the way, your boat has been brought to the coast after this castle. There are stairs going down the cliff. You can stay on this island as long as you want. You're welcome. But you're also free to leave whenever you want. Silence reigned in the stay while those present showed a lost look, absorbed in thoughts that the peace they had become accustomed to was nothing more than an illusion. It didn't take long for them to try to ease their restlessness by going to sleep. Outside the castle, the wind seemed to announce that something was coming. Soon, something that little island was neither prepared for nor knew existed. Despite being a quiet night, none of those who were inside this castle felt at peace or calm. The hours passed, the celestial vault moved and the full moon illuminated everything under the spotlight. The silence of the night was suddenly broken by a deafening cry that had to echo for several kilometers around. A blue fire was repeated from the distance of the town. A blue fire on the beach is approaching. Those towns that woke up first to the screams uttered by some insomniac who liked to walk on the beach at night ran out like a soul led by the devil to see what was happening. From the windows of the castle, he could see blue flames coming out of the water. In the darkness, slowly and inexorably approaching the village, these flames came out of the water already burning and were carried by humanoid silhouettes that advanced in silence. They counted 10, 20, 40. The sum of flames and their carriers did not stop. The inhabitants of that island reacted by fleeing home, struck by an instinctive terror not only of the unknown, but of the evil they knew was approaching. The matriarch instructed her children to ring the bell on top of the castle to warn all their relatives to go to the castle. The chime of the bell rang. It was a sound that most of the islanders had never heard, and yet they knew perfectly well what they had to do. They took what they could of their belongings, including animals, and work tools, took their children on top of them, and ran to the castle without further delay. The screams of those frightened people joined the noises of the animals and the cries of the children. A small human tide moved directly to the castle gates, which were thrown wide open by the sons and daughters of the matriarch. As they entered as orderly as possible, the blue flames and their bearers were already entering the outskirts of the village, setting fire to those rustic homes as they uttered strange words among themselves in an unknown language, almost like rhythmic chants that the islanders did not understand. They joined the sound of the crackling of the fire, the tinkling of the bell, and the sounds of animals and the cries of nervous children. Possibly there had never been such a noise on such a peaceful island. Once all the islanders were inside the castle, they closed the doors and started them as best they could. Most of the strong men armed themselves with what they had at hand and climbed the battlements of the castle. From there, the vision was terrifying. Hundreds of humanoid silhouettes took shape in the light of the blue fire. They looked like decrepit men and women, with wrinkled and pale skin, moving like a swarm of ants towards the food. The village was already completely on fire, and those strange beings were getting closer and closer to the castle. "They are the Kaigu," Vincenzo said. "Prepare yourself. Don't be afraid and go and reinforce the doors. You guys," he pointed to a few of those men who were there, "take bows and arrows from the armory in the second tower and return." From that tumult of the so-called Kaigu emerged a tall, robust figure dressed in dark armor and a cloak, the rest of his group moving aside as he approached too. Let him pass. At one point he stood in front of the doors and, looking at Vincenzo, on the battlements uttered, "You children of luck and happiness will pay for not helping us." His voice was guttural, serious and deep. It resonated in the heads of those who listened to it. "We come for what is rightfully ours, since we are the true children of humanity." The silence behind that individual's words was cut by a shout from the island. Matriarch. "Silence!" Marissa shouted with all her strength. "You are nothing but the shadow of what you could have been. You are no more human than us, and no less. You chose pain and misery, using the ancient machines of our common ancestors to live where it could not be lived. You decided to continue with a war. That no longer made sense. And everything? Why? You seem dead in life. You live under a water that has made you lose your sanity. What do you want from us?" "I am Kezebek, leader of those you call Kaigu in these waters." Kezebek bowed, looking at Marissa. "After introducing myself, I will tell you what we want. We want land, your land. We want food, your food. We want souls, your souls." He said as he moved his arm, pointing to the whole island. "We will eat you as we have eaten the creatures of the sea, and we will make this island a home like the ones before. We will build a city like our common ancestors, and recover once and for all what we lost in the Great Flood." A deafening silence reigned, so dense that it seemed to cut through while the fear of those people now locked in the castle seemed to be able to be smelled. Kezebek then uttered a cry in a language which the inhabitants of the island did not understand, and all his retinue rushed to the gates of the castle. They tried to force them with their hands. They used stones. They cut wood to arrest her and reduce her to ashes, but these doors held. Knocks on the doors caused those inside to scream along with the knocks. Several men began piling what they could find at the gates to make a barricade. It was clear to them that they were fighting for their lives. While that fight for the door was going on, Marissa, exhausted from going up and down the stairs of one of the castle's towers, gathered her family and the stranger in the living room. He made them sit before the fire and addressed Eric. "Eric, we won't get out, but you do." He pointed to one of the statues in the hall. "When you are ready, twist the left ear of this statue. It will take you down a corridor to the boat on the castle beach. I want you to take Mick with you." Then she sat herself up, suffocating from the effort. He looked at his children in the room and said, "And you, whoever wants and can and fits on the barge, should prepare to go with Eric and Mick." They wasted no time and went to find Mick in his room. The poor guy was shaking in his bed, unable to make a sound. "Mike, we have to go," said his mother while caressing him. "No," Mick shouted as tears fell down his cheeks. "I don't want to go. I don't want to leave Grandma, not even the father." The poor boy held on to his mother very tightly, to the point where he wouldn't let her get up as he continued to cry and scream. Vincenzo also entered with tears in his eyes, hugged his wife and son, kissed each of them, and, seeing how Mick was doing, said, "I'm sorry, son." Vincenzo smacked his own son hard on the back of the head to knock him unconscious. He took it in his arms and, going down to his wife's side, gave it to Eric. "Please take care of my son and my wife. Take them to a safe place." The matriarch's family was ready to escape, and during those tense moments, the door finally gave way. Screams of horror and tears ran through all the corridors of the castle. Those who were below went up to the hall and opened the doors. Absolute chaos reigned at that moment, as the Kaigu could be heard killing and eating those still below. Kezebek's laughter could be heard in the background. Marissa took Eric and his daughter by the hand, led them to the statue, in the Seal Hall and turned her left ear while the rest of the people in the hall were busy, guarding the doors. "Quick, go now," Marissa said while coughing and sweating from exhaustion. "Don't look." Marissa couldn't finish the sentence. One of the living room doors gave way. Under the pressure, the Kaigu began to enter violently, pushing aside those who tried to stop them. With the strength they had, it was not difficult for them to break teeth, noses, and even jaws of those who were there. Vincenzo grabbed a chair and smashed it over the fallen, causing some to fall. Down the stairs. "Male, save yourselves," he told his wife and Eric. They both paid attention. Marion took a candle and they went down the stairs to the hidden passage that the statue had revealed. Shortly after entering, the hallway was blocked off as Marissa closed it to prevent them from following. In the darkness that surrounded them in the corridor, lit only by the candle that Marion carried, they went down and down as they heard screams and the struggle in the castle. He could feel through the walls as if they were made of paper. They reached the end of the stairs and a wall blocked their sample passage. Marion brought her candle close to the wall and was able to read as a child, "Press the left, but not the right." Marion didn't understand at first, but she saw that on the wall to her left there were two protruding stones, one more to the left and another to the right. He pressed the left stone and the wall slid away, revealing the beach and the barge. Eric had arrived on. They both ran to it and Eric let Mick in. Once done, they pushed the barge into the water and climbed up as best they could, despite Mick being unconscious. And Marion crying, he took an oar and alongside Eric they moved away from the island as they watched the blue flames consume the village and the interior of the castle. Under the auspices of the full moon, with the barge full of provisions under exile blanket thanks to Marissa, the three exiles went into the sea hoping to find a refuge from the nightmare that life had become. As they rowed away from the horror, Mick dreamed he saw himself grown up, now an adult, walking on a large, almost deserted island with what appeared to be three friends, all four advanced with a firm step. It was hard for him to realize that this island was his home. With the lowest sea level now it was quite a bit bigger. From afar he saw the castle where he had been born and raised. While they had a clear goal, they moved forward with determination along a steep path that crossed the island. He thought he saw in the cloudy sky the face of Quezebec, like a twisted and evil vision. That face smiled and let out a laugh that snapped him back into reality as he dreamed of the rock. "The subject seems to be waking up," said a scientist as he looked at the holographic monitor in front of him. "Yes, their constant seems stable. The process of leaving stasis has been a success," said the other scientist. Inside a capsule of a synthetic material similar to glass, a greyish-green smoke came out when opened. When that smoke spread, it could be seen that the subject was a man, athletic and stocky, about 30 years old. He opened his eyes little by little, indicating that the light bothered him. In front of him, multicoloured lights, holographic monitors everywhere, and tubes coming and going from the floor, ceiling and walls denoted that he was in a laboratory. Two rickety men dressed in tight light blue elasticated overalls approached him. "Don't make any effort," said one of the two men. "Just woke up from a very long nap." The other man passed him a small beeping device. Every time they spoke, a light went on in their monkeys. "His state of health is perfect. Please don't move while I check your metabolism." The subject in question, who was disoriented, decided to comply. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. "Calm down, your condition is normal. Please stay still while we run the preliminary diagnostics." From the small device appeared the hologram of the subject in 3 dimensions. Several points of his body appeared in red, among them the neck and the mouth. "Yes, his ability to speak has been affected by the stasis," said one of the scientists. Everything couldn't be perfect, said the other. They both helped the capsule man up and sat him in a chair that certainly looked quite comfortable. The man in the capsule preferred to follow the lead of the two, scientists who had woken him up. Once he was seated, they began attaching various sticky rubber bands to various parts of his naked body. Please have a little patience. This won't hurt you. A rosy metal helmet was attached to his head, which made a strange squeaking sound. The man became nervous and felt fear trying to get up. From that chair came tights that kept him still and without the possibility of escaping. Don't panic, really. We don't want to hurt him in any way, said one of the scientists as he took his hand to reassure the poor and frightened man. An artificial voice began to speak as the sticky rubbers on the body emitted an electric heat. Subject X48, said that voice. Analyzing neurological electrical scheme, analyzing blood, analyzing lung capacity. The sticky rubbers whistled. Another artificial voice began to speak. Origin of the subject, Union capsule, date of manufacture, end of the 6th millennium. Indeterminacy, due to the poor external condition and the malfunctioning of the capsule's artificial intelligence. Time calculated for stasis, 8 millennia, 7 centuries, 20 years, 14 months, 2 days. One of the scientists touched a button on one of the holographic monitors and the artificial voice that was detailing to the scientist's mind went too quiet. We know, a long time. The scientist continued to press buttons on the holographic monitor. Milena, what is the subject's health diagnosis? The other voice began to answer. Doctor, the subject shows abilities 96% higher than those of the city's inhabitants. The stasis has kept it in perfect condition and in the evolutionary stage prior to the migration. I am forwarding the exact data to his neurological pad. Thank you, Milena, answered the scientist. Is the subject ready for muscle? Stimulation and the introduction of direct data into the brain mass. Yes, doctor. The artificial voice answered. The scientist immediately began manipulating data from the holographic monitor while seeming to concentrate on what was being received directly into his cerebral cortex. It has been a long time since you were among your kind. I'm afraid there is so much information that I can't tell you everything. With this case, you will. Understand the whole situation right away. We will monitor your physical condition and, if necessary, stop the process if we see that you are having a bad time. He hit one last button and that pink helmet started to squeak on the head of that man in the capsule. Images were projected into his mind at such a speed that he gasped for air with all his might from the shock. For this man, time stood still in the outside world as everything happened in his head. He heard a voice speaking to him. Hello, welcome to asteroid 4752. According to the data corresponding to your genome, it belongs to the migration period. His capsule was ejected from one of humanity's first extrasolar target ships after the new rise of human civilization, after the chaos of the new Middle Ages. Images of several ships the size of cities emerged from an immense artificial belt that surrounded the Earth. The images focused on two of the ships that collided. Shortly after, an unrecognizable Earth, almost without water, brown, with black, clouds everywhere. The image from the stratosphere was horrible and painful. In a rather accelerated time-lapse, some ships were seen going to a colony on the Moon, others heading to Mars, others going in various directions, and others approaching asteroids in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In another time-lapse of thousands of years, it was a scene how the colony of the Moon prospered. Wars took place on Mars, other ships disappeared, and those that went to asteroids had made those inert rocks into living quarters propelled by gigantic engines. The time-lapse followed one another as we watched the human species adapt to life on the asteroids and lower gravity. Little by little, they became more. Stunted, with less muscle mass, his lungs adapted to a life with poor air and his digestive system became accustomed to a fully synthetic food made through the minerals the asteroid offered. The humans on these asteroids now spread across the cosmos using the asteroids as homes, founding cities within and creating vast factories with robots to assist them in all tasks. Our man of the past understood that it was what was left of a long-lost humanity. Once the string of images ended, time returned to normal for our protagonist. The two scientists approached him to remove his helmet and sticky rubbers. One smiled at him and offered him a glass of water. "We will turn off the translators. They are no longer needed." Now when he spoke, the light of the monkey no longer came on. "We have transmitted our language directly to your brain. I hope your head hurts less now." The man took a sip from his glass of water. He felt thirsty after all that. "My name is Huat Maya. Thank you for treating me so well." He smiled at the two scientists, even though it was hard for him. "From what I understand, I'm on an asteroid. It's right?" "Yes, Huat. You are on an asteroid, specifically 4572. I am K80 and this is my partner K81. We are both scientists, and after rescuing you from the void, our job is to make you look and feel your best." "K80? Huat looked surprised at the scientists. "What kind of name is this?" K81 laughed. "Of course, we don't use conventional names or surnames. A lot of time has. Past and currently, we are all part of the same collective. In this case, we understand, even if there are dissonant voices, that the best way to survive is by favoring the collective, society. That is why the banality of names and surnames has long been eliminated. We are all one big family. Our survival depends on it." "And what do you want from me? Why did you wake me up?" said Huat. "This, dear friend, will be answered by our appointed representative, Z39. At that moment, a door at the back of the lab opened. A tall, thin figure emerged. From it, dressed in a black frog and white gloves. He wore a horizontal visor that it prevented his eyes from being seen. "Greetings, Huat. My name is Z39, and I am here to formally welcome you to our community." He put his hand in front of his mouth and coughed. "I am sorry to inform you that this rescue was not entirely disinterested and we require your services." "My services, but what can I offer?" Huat asked worriedly. "Very simple, Huat." Z39 approached him with his hands behind his back, in an expository and reflective attitude. "As you will see from our appearance, we are more than weak and sickly. We are a physically declining species surrendered to our dependence on the machines we have created and improved over millennia." He coughed again. "On the contrary, you are one of the few humans who enjoys the good condition of our ancestors, not to mention that you are one of those who were genetically manipulated before birth to have all the physical and mental advantages of a superior human being." He turned suddenly. "We have a problem in our society, and that is that we are used to working behind the collective. Our individuality exists, but it is not like yours. This is why. Surprises or problems within our society, if it is not possible to solve them, collectively, escape our understanding." He turned again, looking at Huat's face. "There are several individuals who are a danger to our society, and as strange. As it may seem to you, we need your help to stop them, since we cannot detect them in time. There are also rampant machines that cause problems." "Excuse me, Z39, are you asking me to be a policeman?" Huat said while he couldn't help but laugh. "Not exactly, young friend. We need you to be the law." As you may have noticed, but we have included in the transfer to your cerebral cortex all the social norms as well as laws of our society. Now look at the following pictures. Z39 pointed Huat to a spot in the lab, where a hologram appeared showing various parts of that immense city, which would surely make Earth's 21st century. Megalopolises look ridiculous, and Huat couldn't resist staring in certain situations that seemed annoying. A woman assaulted a robotic worker when a metal basket fell on him. 2 robots ignored the plea for help from an old man who had fallen to the ground. Really unimportant situations, but for Huat they were a horrible nuisance, as if he had been offended. "This is the face I wanted to see," Z39 laughs. "Now you understand? We have programmed you to avoid any situation of this kind. Do you look capable?" Let's see if I understood. I woke up after 8,000 years of having left my ship in a completely different environment, in an advanced society that is. Unable to control everyone who shows individualistic attitudes, and that seemed to have denigrated themselves as a species, Huat said, frowning. "I'm afraid that's a good summary, Huat. No one is perfect," Z39 said as the 2 scientists blushed. "Do I have an alternative?" Huat asked. "I'm afraid not, young friend. We can always put you back into stasis as an option." He threatened Z39. "Okay, I don't have anything better to do either," Huat said, disguising his concern. A robot with a humanoid shape, and that looked more human than it appeared, entered the lab, wearing strange clothing like the humans he had recently met. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I am bringing you clothes to improve your comfort. If you are hungry or require anything else, just call me." He helped him get up from the chair as the mesh that prevented him from moving disappeared. "By the way, I'm Unit 009, or, if you prefer, U9. Sorry I didn't introduce myself earlier. I am at your disposal." "Thanks, U9. How kind." Huat was happy to meet a robot that looked completely human and was so helpful. "It's my job, sir," said the robot. "Call me Huat, please," Huat said to the robot, still naked while placing his right hand on his shoulder. "Whoa, please get dressed. It makes me feel very uncomfortable like this." The robot covered its eyes. Huat didn't understand the robot's emotional response, but seeing that it really had been naked all this time, he dressed in that strange outfit. When she put it on, the clothes adjusted automatically and made her feel like she was in a warm and pleasant place. A voice rang out from the suite. "Thank you for using me. My biomechanical system will take care of helping you in all the necessary tasks. When it requires nutrients, I will let you know." Huat was frightened. "Did my clothes just talk?" said Huat. "Yes, we use biomechanical systems for clothing. They have their own artificial intelligence, and in our case, they help us survive in our weak state. In your case, it will enhance your innate abilities for the task we have assigned you. Another thing, no need to ask where the bathroom is. There are no bathrooms. The suit cleans and recycles our waste, using it as nutrients." One of the scientists explained to him. Huat made a grimace of disgust that amused those present. "And what means do I need to do my job?" Huat asked Z39. "The potential patrols as well as the orientation schemes of the city have been implemented. In addition, you have an automated vehicle, which will be your faithful companion outside these facilities. You just have to keep active the protocols we have implanted. Your subconscious will take care of making your job easier." Z39 turned to retreat but stopped suddenly. "And thank you, Huat. We will be eternally grateful to you for this." After saying these words, he left the laboratory. U9 escorted Huat outside the facility, and the 2 scientists said a friendly goodbye to the awakened young man. When the door to the outside of the facility opened, Huat could not hide his surprise. In front of him, an immense metal city that had millions of souls and that spread everywhere. It was built on the rock of the asteroid. Artificial gravity allowed the city to be built up and down to the right and left of the asteroid. There were vehicles moving from one place to another without a problem, showing that the only part that did not have the same gravity was the empty space of the asteroid itself, caves and passages leading into undeveloped areas. Of the asteroid could be seen in several places. Huat, who was of an age when he already understood the stupidity of conceiving concepts like up and down in space, was fascinated by the technological advance. That allowed an asteroid to host as many or more souls than dozens of ships of their time, even entire countries. In his opinion, the robots that in their time were little more than servants had now obtained full rights and duties in a society that rewarded them precisely for their indispensability. They were all individuals making up the same society. They were all, in a certain way, all for one and one for all, a collective that advanced to continue existing while the rock that supported them advanced through an eternal void. Absorbed by this vision, amazed at something so different, he stood still slowly, observing everything around him. U9 took it out of traffic. "I'm sorry, Huat. Are you okay?" Huat came to himself. Yeah. He turned to face U9. "I was simply amazed to see this city. I'm glad he got—" "Treat me, U9. There's no reason for you to talk to me like that." Huat interrupted. Both indulged in a banal conversation about what Huat did not know about that world that now hosted him, while something similar to a floating motorcycle approached from the top of the facilities that housed the laboratory where had awakened Huat. "Greetings, mortal," said the vehicle with a hoarse and metallic voice as it placed it near Huat. "I have been assigned as your partner," he braked dry. "It was a joke. My name is V70 and I'm your co-worker. I hope I didn't scare you with my humour." Huat laughed. He was engrossed in looking at that talking vehicle. It was determined that the type of engine was powered by some fuel that he was unable to comprehend, in addition to the energy that must be required not only to move this ship, but also to give such a complex artificial life to a vehicle. More than a minute was spent trying to determine how it would have been manufactured. "Wow, do I have something on my face or what?" said V70. "Sorry, mate, I've never met a mate who carried me on and had such a sense of humour," Huat said, laughing. "I had a hard time finding humour from your time in the databases, but I also didn't expect it to make you laugh so quickly. I have the details of your accommodation. Do you think it's a good idea to take you there first so you can get used to it?" "Okay, let's see," Huat said with conviction. Huat rode V70 as he said goodbye to U9. The vehicle accelerated in such a way that, although Huat was securely fastened, he was afraid of falling. Little more than 8 seconds later, they had crossed almost the entire city to a kind of opaque skyscraper which seemed to be made up of cubicular departments. V70 slowed slightly as it approached one of the opaque walls that made up a bucket, and as it approached, the wall changed consistency. V70 broke through the wall like a soap bubble and landed on the floor of that cubicle. Surprised, Huat looked at the cubicle, which was larger than expected. It had an almost vertical sleep pod, what looked like an automated food generation system, and a small tube that had to be the closest thing to a bathroom. There was no decoration, and a light completely surrounded that cabin. The closest thing to a chair was some kind of rounded armchair that looked comfortable, and it was in front of what looked like a holographic communication system. In that cubicle of just over 30 square meters, there was nothing else. "Do you like Huat?" V70 asked. "It is one of the largest in the community, if You need anything you can call U9 through the system on the back of your hand. Or me, although as you can see from what I do, I can keep you company in here. Whenever you want. Thanks, V70, Huat said as he felt all the surfaces of the cubicle and the strange objects in it. For now, rest in your capsule. You need to rest after so much time disconnected. From the world. I'll wait for you right where I am. V70 turned off sleep mode. Huat decided after so many surprises that the fellow was right. So he crawled into his sleep pod and fell asleep peacefully lulled by the artificial feel of the system. At this time and in the situation he was in, they rather carelessly brought the rest of the affairs to him. Hours passed, and Huat dreamed for the first time in millennia. His brain activity, mixed with the information he received from the strange rosy helmet, caused him nightmares, where he imagined enforced marches that separated him from thousands of years of human development. In reality, the sleep capsule was unsuccessfully trying to stabilize the sleeper, as his physiology was not something it was programmed for. Huat was reloading inside the capsule, sweating and screaming, immersed in that nightmare that seemed to him to have no end, but it finally ended. Our protagonist woke up, and upon opening his eyes, the sleep capsule washed over his face and hair. The food machine turned on by itself and ejected capsules of various colors that arranged themselves on the table. V70, sensing Huat's movements, turned on. Good morning, mate. Did you sleep well? No, V70, I haven't slept well at all. I've had the most horrible nightmares of my entire existence, he said, panting. Don't worry. You ingest the nutrients produced by the food machine and you will feel better. And Huat walked over to the table where the multicolored capsules were, and after. Holding one between his fingers, looking at it, smelling it, and investigating it, he swallowed it alongside a glass of water. He grimaced. This doesn't know anything. Of course not, Huat. They are nutrients in a pure state prepared to be digested and assimilated by the body as soon as possible, V70 explained to him. Can't I have eggs and bacon for breakfast like a normal person? Huat looked angry. I don't know how you could make these meals with what the rock that is the asteroid offers, but I bet they were addicted, V70 joked. Huat closed his eyes, covered his nose, and swallowed all the capsules at once, with a gulp of water. At that moment, the cubicle's holographic communicator turned on. A voice rang out. Alert! Sabotage attempt detected at mine 42. Immediate presence required. Finished the sentence, the communicator was turned off. Wow, we have to go. Get on me, V70 told him as he turned to get ready to leave. Huat did not hesitate and boarded V70, which immediately began to raise its flight to exit that metamorphic wall. It was clear that the intelligent vehicle knew where it was going, since in a few minutes, dodging traffic, they arrived at the mining complex after going through the various tunnels that left the city to get there. In front of them, robots and humans worked with complex machinery to extract from the asteroid itself the materials that served for every purpose in the city. Huge machines the size of skyscrapers were engaged in the selection and purification of the necessary according to their programming, while the waste was ejected and incorporated into a strange mass that returned to the asteroid. They couldn't help but notice that one of the huge machines wasn't computing. A pair of robots approached V70 and Huat as they landed, signaling them to look into one of the tunnels. When they looked over there, they saw the silhouettes of 3 humanoids fleeing into the tunnel. Huat got off and started running at high speed in the direction of those silhouettes, while V70 stayed to talk to the 2 robots that had beckoned them. For more information, the young man's speed meant that in barely a minute he could see the suspects far in the tunnel. It was clear that the 3 individuals were humans, or at least the humans that inhabited the asteroid. Hearing Huat, one turned and threw what appeared to be a tiny orb, then immediately ran back to his fellow miscreants. The sphere rolled across the ground until it reached Huat, and just as it was about to pass over it exploded. From that sphere came an amorphous, colourful mass that threw him towards the ceiling of the tunnel, and then it began to harden, leaving our young protagonist immobilised. A few moments later, V70 arrived through the tunnel, seeing Huat in that situation. He helped him by shooting rays of a strange liquid that melted that coloured mass that had hardened. The boy fell on top of the vehicle, which launched at full speed, following the route of the tunnel while the young man tried to keep his balance. Finally, they managed to catch those 3 individuals, who, surprised by the nearby ambush of V70, threw themselves on the ground screaming. Huat jumped out of the vehicle to hit at least one of the criminals. He successfully managed to land on one and knock him unconscious. The other 2 slowly stood up with their hands up in surrender. At that moment, a dull blow hit Huat squarely in the back of the head and he fainted. When he awoke, he was in the pod he had previously woken up in. He looked through the glass and saw that he was wandering aimlessly through the endless void of space. Huat screamed and started banging on the glass, wondering if it had all been a dream of the wind. I never would have thought that I would have to experience something like this. Despite my young age, I have experienced the undoing of society. I leave these fragments of my personal journal hidden here waiting for someone to find them one day. God willing, they will be read by those who owe. March 20th, 2021. My level of boredom and loneliness is such that it led me to start this journal. I've been alone for days. I can't find anyone to share dinner with, even though it's cold. Barcelona, who saw you and who sees you. A few days ago you were a bustling city and now you are just an inert desert without anyone. Now I miss the complaints I used to make about taxi drivers who almost hit you, the cars that swerved without looking, and many other details that would now add some spice to my life. All I have left is this old electric scooter to get around at night, the books, and the solar generator I built as a hobby. It took me days to figure out how to repurpose all the old lithium batteries I had around the house, and this saved me from the dark. I'm lucky to live in the basement of the example, where I've been able to isolate both myself and the doors and windows. I dare not go out during the day in case they find me. What a cruel dilemma, voluntary solitude or delaying company. Here I am, alone with water purified from rain and with a cold soup to eat. I miss you. I miss everyone. April 1st, 2021. I have finally decided to explore the outside. Even though I was prudent and stocked my house, I needed to feel free for a moment. Tonight I was able to go outside even though I was afraid. It was raining and it is precisely the sound of the rain that allowed me to use the electric scooter without fear of making so. Much noise. Very little time has passed for Barcelona to be like this. Sidewalks in bad shape, cars in the middle of the road, fallen trees, broken windows. But the worst of all is the darkness and loneliness. I went to the first grocery store nearby, and it was empty. The shutter was broken and forced, and it was plain to see that it had been ransacked days ago. As I explored the surroundings of my house, the silence became more and more terrifying. The sound of the rain outside made my hair stand on end, thinking that something bad could happen at any moment. Suddenly, a flash of lightning and the second of thunder. The storm was upon me. I jumped in fright next to the scooter. I was heading towards Hospitalet from Cara de Còrsega, 2 streets away from the Sagrada. Familiar. I didn't want to ride in wider places like parks or open spaces, so I rode the driveway under the upright, fallen trees that allowed me to pass underneath. I reached Passeig de Saint-Jean and was not able to continue that beautiful walk. Full of trees, flowers, and children's play areas gave me fear. Loneliness attacked me like a knife in the back. I felt watched, and I thought I heard things that weren't there. It must be Imagination, I thought, but in the face of doubt, I turned around and returned. Home the way I had come. I didn't find anything of interest on the way there. April 5th, 2021. I heard them upstairs. I know I'm alone in the estate. I've checked it 1,000 times when everyone fled. I've created a false wall in the back room of my house, where I hide when I'm scared. No one would suspect it's a false wall except, without the plans of the estate at hand. I sleep during the day and live at night. There is no other way. But why upstairs? Why haven't they entered my house? The door is not locked, just tight. Was it? Smart to leave it open? Does it make my home habitable less suspect? I have no choice but to live in silence so that no one can hear me. I have no choice but to do it this way. I feel alone, that I can't do but talk to myself. Will they really be the ones on top? Am I going crazy? I don't know, nor do I want to know. Curiosity killed the cat. April 7th, 2021. I thought I heard people today. I've gotten so used to the silence that my hearing has become finer. It was all a lie. A simple trap in my neighbourhood. I don't really know for what purpose. I can only add that I had illusions. I went out carefully, armed, protected, at night, expecting to find people. I brought a backpack with food and a first aid kit in case anyone needed help, but there was no one where the voices of what sounded like people were coming from. I couldn't avoid going to the origin in front of the Sagrada Familia. There was nothing but a luminescent black box. What came out was the imitation of human voices. Of course it was a trap. Still lucky that I saw it from afar with the binoculars. Surely they had seen me, and surely they would follow me. Today the doubt hit. Me? What should I do? I did what I had to do. I got into the sewers. There no one would follow me. Although they still smelled something bad, the lack of people's waste and the constant rains, as well as the abandonment, had turned this sewer into a dark corridor that I illuminated with a flashlight. It was my second time in a sewer, and I have to say I didn't expect it to be so clean. I decided to make a map as I went along. It was clear to me that this could save my life. I took note of all those exits I found, of all the openings at the foot of the worst street, and later I had no choice but to feed the rats I met so they would leave me. Alone, I could hear something moving through the streets right above me. They were looking for me. I knew it. I felt it. That vehicular artifact that was moving above me was one. Why can't I find anyone? What do they want from me? To say the least, I was comfortable in that maze of dark corridors as they kept me, safe until they gave up. I went back the way I had come and exited through the same sewer. I went home, to wash and sleep when the sun came up. April 10th, 2021. Got food and batteries tonight, and lots of batteries. The shops near the Sagrada Familia were dirty, and I was able to open doors and shutters with no problem. With the nightingale set I've had for years, I took advantage of this moonless night and again the rain to make use of subterfuge. Luck smiled on me today. I was able to play on my Nintendo Switch at last. I have. Collected enough utensils and provisions for weeks, about 40 kilos in all. It's been awful carrying him around, but it's not the first time I've had to overexert myself in my life. April 16th, 2021. I got it! It took me days, but I managed to make a tunnel by carefully drilling. Through the floor of my house, I have now created access to the sewers. I've opened up endless possibilities to go wherever I want in the city, and for the rats to come in and out of my house as they please. I have made a rustic gate to block access, except for rats, which are welcome. These little beings keep me company and are good friends. Who would have said? It. They wash more than my cat. May she rest in peace. They are tidy and well looked after. They alert me to any strange noises, and we play constantly. I feed them and they bring me things like a Nintendo Switch. Game recently. I don't know where they got it from, but thanks to them I'm much more entertained when I'm not being asked to play. I'm not alone anymore. April 20th, 2021. The rats woke me up this morning and they are nocturnal. They have uttered several squeals of danger as they have heard something outside my house. Thanks to them, I was able to escape into the sewers next door. I feel part of this colony of rats, which number more than 50, to which I have named each a number. They took me to the abandoned Gaudi station to keep me safe. Poor things. They have been turning to see if he was following him. I've built a shelter in the abandoned subway stop, and I've built a playground for the rats out of cardboard boxes and tubes, and I've made an automated food dispenser out of an old raspberry that runs on lithium batteries and batteries. It's fun to watch them take turns eating. I have also made a mini pool for them to swim in. I will never fully understand these sweet, affectionate yet selfish animals. I have to say I owe them my life right now. The bed I've improvised to make her comfortable has made the rats want to sleep. On a blanket next to me, to be by my side. April 25th, 2021. I had no choice but to loot several pharmacies and veterinary clinics. I've needed medicine to restock my first aid kits and to treat the cold the rats seem to have caught. I'm still crowded for now in the abandoned station. It has taken them a long time to understand that the syrups and medicines I gave them were for their own good. Because of their habits of being together, the cold has gone from affecting one to affecting several like an epidemic. It seems like a lie how fast these animals live, and I have already witnessed several births. More. Lie seems to have had to make a hot chicken broth for the rats, without the vegetables and tubers that could kill them. When they saw that the first one I gave her broth with a syringe was enjoying it, despite the fact that she resisted at first, the rest practically queued for me to tell them the same. Some wanted to put themselves in front of the others, but in the end there were too many for all. These days, noises have been heard on the surface from heavy machinery. Fortunately, I have enough time to be quiet here for a while with my new friends. Although I want to return home, I think about it every day. May 1st, 2021. Today was my birthday, and to celebrate I made a cake for the rats, who are now cured. I decided to take a bath. It took me hours to gather enough water and heat it up, but I couldn't stand the colognes, perfumes, and wet wipes to tidy up. It's been awful going without a shower or bath for so long. Also, most of the rats have been bathed, and I was able to clean the clothes. Weeks of laundry piled up, smelling like a dead person. It's been a day of celebration to the point of exhaustion, watching movies on my tiny GPD Win laptop, playing music and playing with the rats. May 7th, 2021. I'm going crazy. I hear voices in my head, in a language I don't understand. If the rats hear them, they ignore them. But in my case, I can't sleep well. I hear these voices in my head echoing as they speak to me. Who are they? It's been days since I put signs in the sewers to warn that I'm here. They never go down, but there should be someone else. Why isn't there anyone else? May 8th, 21. Today, I finally got to go home, through the hole I made. Someone has been here, everything is removed, and I left it unpolluted, in the order I like. I took everything I could to my new home. I was surprised that nothing was missing. It could only have been them. Where will they all be? May 10th, 2021. In today's inquiry, I found another person. Finally, another human being. In an abandoned building that had been occupied for years, I found a girl, alone, dying, unconscious, about 20 years old. After checking her state of health and seeing that she could move without suffering pain, I put her on my neck and I took her in the shelter in the abandoned subway station. I nursed him back to health until he finally woke up. His surprise has caused him to throw the soup he had prepared for him on the floor, which has become the rat colony's dinner. I finally managed to calm her down, although she doesn't seem to be able to speak, at least for now. When she started to cry, I comforted her in my arms and stroked her head until she calmed down. It didn't take long for her to fall asleep, so I decided to leave her a note next to the bed I built for her next to food and filtered water when she wakes up. May 11th, 2021. After the guest felt more comfortable and at ease, I lent her my Nintendo Switch. For entertainment. Continue without speaking. As of now, he tells me everything, discreetly. She seems very sociable and has immediately made friends with the rats who at the same time seem to enjoy her presence and the way she plays with them. I have not been able to force her to talk or explain to me the reason for the situation. The rest of the day was quiet. May 13th, 2021. The guest woke me up screaming, apparently because of a nightmare. At last he has spoken. And what if he does? I almost preferred her in silence, with that sharp and shrill voice. In addition to the fright of waking up, it has given me a headache. He was crying and I had to comfort him again, while some of the rats came over to show him affection in their own way. Now I know her name, Christina. He explained to me that they had taken her during the day when they found her, hiding under a pantry in the dining room of the occupied house. They grabbed her by the hair and dragged her until two more grabbed her by the arms and legs. He said that they took her away between spetzes that he did not understand, while the wind that accompanied them blew everywhere. Between sobs, he explained to me that he woke up in a bluish and brilliant oval-shaped room lying on a kind of rigid and uncomfortable stretcher from which he could not move. Some strange force prevented him from moving. He continued as he felt such fear that he tried to scream, but his mouth did not emit a word. She remembers how they touched her with cold metal tools like ice, pain, fear, until she fainted. When she woke up, she was in my shelter, unable to speak and not knowing why. She had been left in the same place since they took her. I felt fear. Was she a spy? I've read enough science fiction to know that's something. In it can mean betrayal or perdition. Is she to blame for the situation? I will keep. Watch with a smile the poor creature is not to blame for it, and the rats seem to. Trust her. May 19th, 2021. They have been quiet days with Christina and the rats. We have lived a normal life. As much as possible, although some of the rats and their young have died over. The course of these days. It is the law of life. I have had long conversations with Christina and we have decided that in the next few days we will go on an expedition to look for more people. How I have missed having human company. May 23rd, Today was the day, or in any case, the night. We prepared to look for more people around the city. We had enough gear to last us 2 nights outside the shelter, as well as guns I looted from a hunting store. You never know. The rest of the diary is illegible. Of the metal. Wake up, produce, and sleep. DPD. DPD was the leitmotif that defined our day-to-day. Ours was to do these activities as the only motivation in an endless circle. Our consciousnesses now lay in a world that was not our own, and yet at least. People of my generation and before could aspire to imagine, remember, and dream what the world was like before. The new generations already born into this new world grafted in directly at birth were not so lucky. They would possibly never know what it was like to use a physical body, possibly. Never know what it was like to feel pain or physical sensations. It is worth saying that his lack of interest in the previous world caused me on the one hand disgust and on the other, admiration, blissful ignorance. I don't know what the long-term effect will be or what would happen if this new world collapsed and we could get out of it. There are no smells or physical sensations. We are slaves to our minds and emotions, artificially manipulated behind the common good. Forced integration has been a success, as we no longer obey physical needs with bodies we can no longer see or feel. We are only our consciousnesses trapped in, a world that is alien to us, but at the same time It is our only possible home. I wake up every day in my living room to an alarm that I can't even set, and I immediately move to the section that was assigned to me, programming. The human mind is prodigious, and in this case, it has proven to be better than many. Computers! That's why I'm needed. That's why I'm essential. I'm in charge of programming, the system I'm on, and I spend my day writing and modifying lines of code. It was difficult at first, as we were now integrated into the same system we were, programming from non-stop. No screens or keyboards were needed, all hour. Attention was focused on writing, revising, and modifying a huge computer code. That defined all the variables of our new existence. My specialty? Find errors, discrepancies, alterations, and make a note of them. And then fix them. Our consciousness was digitized, and with it our thoughts and emotions. All the information was displayed for us programmers as simple lines of code that could be queried and manipulated. There were hundreds, thousands doing this task. We could see what the rest of the congeners were doing. We could empathize to a certain extent, since by not requiring food or rest until the end of our day, our existence was reduced to the DPD, locked in. This routine, putting faces, voices, and even soul to all those lines of code, was the only thing that allowed us to fantasize. After countless hours of work, an alarm goes off. Time to finish. Go back to the cockpit and sleep. DPD, the only possible routine in this new world, once and again and again and again. We lost count of the days we didn't remember. What the days, weeks, months, years were. Those words made no sense. We didn't even recognize each other when we saw each other. Our identity was diluted, perhaps, sublimated. It wasn't important either. The only thing it explained was our task for the duty that had been assigned to us. We didn't know who had assigned us those roles and jobs, but we didn't wonder either. We didn't speak, we only thought, and we communicated with them. It was strange at first, but we get used to having multiple levels of thought, as if several channels were simultaneously active and we could converse with each other while concentrating on our tasks. However, thinking outside the box was dangerous. Everything was recorded and digitized. Everything was visible in readable form to those of us who understood that code. And despite everything, we dreamed in our sleep. It was our last permitted bastion of freedom. But that did not make it private and intimate, as it was likewise stored and visible to anyone who knew how to read it. Over time, we learned to think in code, to avoid thinking about what is not allowed. We censored ourselves, and some even had our own coded mental safe, where we could store our thoughts with some peace of mind. This write-up is actually one of those. Coded thoughts I compose while doing my chores to avoid the angst and despair of living a robotic, repetitive life. If language made us human, it still kept us in our fifth essence as a species, but not. Speaking and being in a system without privacy had made us something else. Maybe. We were no longer fully human, but a little more or a little less. There were no anthropologists or philosophers who could think about it, much less share it. No one would bother to define this new humanity cloistered in a virtual metal world. What was left of us but our digitized consciousnesses? Our reward was artificial happiness, our punishment mental pain and madness. We all longed to continue in this constant euphoria and happiness, feeding back into our routine. We had nothing, but we were happy. Falsely happy, but in the end, we were. Mistakes paid dearly, so did insubordination. It is a strict system in which losing that subjective happiness was already a punishment, but for the system it was not enough. Making mistakes or performing subversive activities turned into boredom, headache, sadness, discomfort. Our thoughts were not ours since we were at the mercy of some kind of button they had to press to return us to normal. This pain and discomfort was such that it prevented us from being ourselves. We've all experienced it in one way or another. We all know what it is, and that's why we avoid it, whether we like it or not. We pity those who suffer, and despite our human empathy, we know that it is not in our hands to relieve it for others. Everything is in the hands of something or someone superhuman that watches over our every act and thought. We, in programming, fix errors, filter, report, but we don't know who receives this information. We only know what we have to do, and that these actions have consequences that are applied by what we call superior. Everything is change, like a river that never ceases. Every second there is more and more to look forward to. But this is what my existence is now based on. DPD, nothing else. Nothing else is needed. Happiness, our motivation, our longing, and our if. We have nothing but ourselves, and I wonder if I still belong. Of the flesh. DNA, RNA, mutations, cells, molecules, mitochondria. Everything in anyone's mouth, in any possible audio-visual medium. The fifth human essence had been so diluted that only letters and laws could try to define it again. It was a new humanity, or maybe not. The limits of our biology were clear, and there were environments and places we could not access. But with genetic engineering, all that had changed. There were no limits to which at least a part of us Homo sapiens could not go. For centuries, we had conquered the most remote places of our world and beyond. The cold poles, the deep seas, the volcanic environments, and even the vacuum of space. We had integrated into our being in other individuals all those traits that made it possible to survive without effort in these places. In a way, humanity thrived tirelessly and multiplied without limits in all those environments. Famous were the underwater cities of the so-called fishmen, the icy colonies of the penguinmen, the fiery centres of the cyanidemen, and the rocky void nests of the tardigrade men. At first, these advances met with opposition from those who frowned upon altering the human form, but over the years the populace accepted as a blessing the new human's ability to thrive where previously it was impossible. Decades of prosperity followed in which all those new humans were considered brothers. It was joy that defined a diverse humanity beyond apparent differences. We were the same species. Despite the progress that it meant, humanity saw no limit and hybridized more. Beings for the strangest purposes. Livestock, strong labor to carry the heaviest. Materials where machinery could not. Pets. The human expression reached a point where anthropocentrism took on a new dimension. Practically everything was human. It was then, upon reaching this point, that, as has happened at other times in history, humanity decided to close itself again in an ideal of purity and immutability that reduced those who until recently were considered brothers to simple tools. As in ancient Greece, where there were only two classes, the citizen and the non-citizen, now there was only the human being and their derivatives. The entire legal apparatus focused its efforts on delegitimizing those impure human beings, relegated now to a new category that recalled the ancient slavery that humanity boasted of having freed itself from. There were rebellions and conflicts, since no one accepts to lose something. They have, in this case, freedom and free will. In my opinion, they demonstrated an understanding and humanity that we could no longer boast of. Despite the losses on both sides, which lasted for decades, the solution was in the hands of the so-called cigars, who through that genetic mastery created biological weapons to reduce through terror the impure, which then far outnumbered the cigars. Surrender was something to be expected, and all those considered impure became simple tools and objects for the use and enjoyment of cigars. From this decades ago, now the rational and dissonant voices within our society are beginning to demand, in the face of the abuse of the impure, that That golden age when we were all brothers should return. While I am writing this article as requested by the Ministry of Equality, the March of the Million Impers is now taking place in New Moscow, the current capital of the Eurasian system. According to the media, clashes are currently taking place between the Perron, police forces and the pure Kapitostos, and the impure and pure sympathizers. Chaos reigns in the capital while I write these lines without being clear about the outcome that will take place due to these events. Having dedicated myself completely to the study of human culture in its entirety and used to define everything related to it with objectivity, I have no more to say than, in my opinion, we must ourselves realize the timely arrangements to find a way to become one humanity again. I have traveled to the cities of New Atlantis in the Atlantic, where I have been treated like royalty by our sea kin. I saw how they were one with the sea and nature and how their cities were as sustainable as possible. Those who were out of tune were not them. They were those who are like you. And me. Dear reader, we were the ones who had enslaved our brothers and had them clean up all the dirt we dumped into the ocean for centuries. They showed me a brotherly love that I have only experienced with other more primitive human groups. They did not appreciate the greed and rancor that is our own in our society. In the frozen places of Antarctica and its new Lemuria, I have seen our brothers prosper with fish and seaweed farms, with frozen cities that seemed to come out of fiction films. And again, it wasn't them who were out of tune in that environment. It was us, living in luxurious reserves adapted to our needs. In the sea, enslaved for cleaning. In the ice, enslaved to produce nutrients. Is this a sign of humanity? Throughout history, we have witnessed a struggle between classes, nations, religions, races, sexes, genders, and for centuries, over genetics. If we stop to think about it, we are victims of ourselves, becoming numb to, always seeing a common enemy marked by difference. Perhaps what gives us some peace is to feel superior, or to mark ourselves in, differences to dilute our existential pain behind an unnecessary struggle that has only caused death and injustice. As expected, our cyclical nature does nothing but repeat itself from the irrelevance of collective insecurity. Dear reader, I hope I have not caused you uneasiness with my words, but please, reflect and be able to see that this is nothing more than a mistake that we have. Already repeated many times, I ask you earnestly not to be part of this chronicled cruelty that will, certainly, go down in the annals of history as a mistake of the ice. I see. What do you see there? A little thing? What color is it? White? This is not funny. Because everything is white around us. Kim and Mikkel were two brothers, born a few years ago in a white world. It goes without saying that it was white with snow, hence the lack of fun in the game they were playing. Both brothers lived in a small community at the foot of the Catalan Pyrenees. All his life. Experience was confined to a quiet life with his parents in a wooden house near a nearby mountain, which protected them somewhat from the cold and wind, and visiting his neighbors in the community. As is typical of children, they tried to spend most of their time playing, this when their parents did not assign them tasks. "Quim, Mikkel, it's time for dinner," said Anna, his mother. "Let's go, Mom," said Quim. They ran home with joy and with an atrocious hunger. They had spent the day playing around, and this had only increased their already almost insatiable appetite. "What's for dinner, Mum?" Mikkel said as he took off his many warm clothes. "Root stew with rabbit meat," Anna said as she stirred the huge dinner pot with a ladle. "Your favourite dish?" "So good," Quim said, while his brother helped him take off his warm clothes. Both of them, already without the layers of clothes they had to wear outside the house, sat with the greatest of joys at the table. "Where is the father?" asked Mikkel. He went to see the neighbours. It seems they had a problem, he said, sighing. I don't. Think it will take long, but you eat and go to bed, it's late and you have to go to class. Tomorrow. Yes, Mum, the two brothers said in unison. Anna was proud to have raised her two children in such a cruel and inhospitable world. His two children were healthy and showed no signs of illness. Both he and his husband were aware that they were very lucky. Most of the children did not live past the age of 5 due to diseases caused by the situation that had left the world in what seemed like an ice age, or else colder than how normal. The two children ate as if they had not eaten in days, which was not true, for they ate every day, and it was torture enough for their mother to cook every day the quantities they required and burn with so much movement. But seeing the faces was worth it. The happiness that caused him to see his children happy made that torture a little fleeting, and well rewarded. As they both ate dinner, the wind outside grew stronger. All the inhabitants of the house ignored the said gale, as always. After they finished the feast, they both went to sleep. Their mother pulled them close, stroked their little heads, and with a smile, wished them a good night and sweet dreams. The night ritual concluded, she left them in Morpheus' arms and went to the dining room to read, waiting for her husband's return. Hours passed. Anna looked at the clock. It was 11 at night and her husband had not returned. She started to get nervous. He tried to calm his nerves by reading, but something inside told him that this delay couldn't be normal. He began to imagine the worst. It turned in his head until the door of the house opened. It was her husband. "Affection, you had me worried," Anna said as she ran to hug her husband. "Don't worry, the Dominex generator was damaged and it took a lot to repair." He hugged his wife, showing relief. "It smells very good. What's for dinner?" "The children's favourite dish," answered Anna. "Root stew with field rat?" he asked. "Yes, but you know I don't like that. Remember that children can't stand rats." He covered his mouth with his index finger. "It's a rabbit. Remember it, rabbit." "Okay, Anna, whatever you say," he said while taking off his warm clothes. "Thank you, Geordie," Anna said, smiling. They both sat down to dinner. That stew smelled and tasted like glory. Geordie savoured each spoonful as if the previous one had not explained. He was making sounds of pleasure as he enjoyed this meal. Anna kept looking at Geordie like when they fell in love. They had been together since the world had changed. They had met precisely as a result of the change in the world, coincidences of life. "Anna, I was thinking, do you remember when they told us about climate change?" said Geordie. "Of course, it was a constant. First, I remember that when we went to school we were told about the greenhouse effect. Over the years they called it global warming," he said, reflectively. "And in the end it was always climate change." "What do you think our parents would say now?" asked Geordie. "Ugh, the most likely thing is that with the character they had, they blamed what the media said," answered Anna while eating. "Don't you remember the uproar when the chemtrails thing was discovered and the drought it caused?" "Yes, it was horrible. I still remember my parents going to the anti-government demonstrations," snapped Geordie. "And do you miss the radio and television?" "And the internet?" said Anna with sadness. "The truth is that the internet is, but radio and television are not. What peace we have now," Geordie said, laughing. "And are you missing something else?" Anna said a little mischievously. "Complain about the heat," answered Geordie, laughing at the end of the sentence. They both laughed, ate dinner, and once they were done, they went to the couch too. Cuddle like a teenage couple. They were happy and lived in peace. The next day, and as was customary, it was their children who woke them up. The children's energy was exhausting, but at the same time a source of life for them. Anna prepared breakfast, helped the children get dressed and quickly sent them off to classes at a neighbour's house. The community took the education of its children very seriously. Future echoes of the society to be raised. Geordie, meanwhile, got dressed and prepared to do his tasks to keep the community machinery running, which allowed the residents to have the basics to stay warm and live. at home without the restlessness of when they created the Zero community. Quim and Mikkel, eager to learn about the world around them, ran to take their places. In the community's educational centre, they were only 8 children, but the hope of a tomorrow was placed in them. "Good morning, class," said the owner of the house and teacher. "Good morning, Professor," the children said in unison. "Today I will talk to you about how the world used to be and how we have come to live in a white and cold world." He took out several books from a cupboard. The teacher then explained the functioning of society before the Great Cold. She was telling the children about the different social castes of the society they called democratic, in which a political oligarchic caste directed and ruled the way of society, and all the important decisions without them being involved in any way. He told them about the constant social, economic, ecological, energy crises, the excess of information, the manipulation of information. Despite the young age of the children, between 6 and 14 years old, the teacher already gave them a summary of how society was structured throughout the ages of humanity, always exposing and making them understand the differences of classes and their evolution during them. Children were amazed and often fantasized about those classes in which the only thing that changed was the ruling class, free citizens, feudal lords, aristocracy, bourgeoisie, political plutocratic oligarchy. Living in such a small community, they were surprised to imagine cities with millions of souls with instant communication, which made the world a much smaller place than it seemed. The teacher then explained to them that everything changed when the different nations, in a constant energy crisis, went to war for the resources of the rest. Blocks of nations were formed, some disappearing under tanks and bombs. Others became stronger, others weaker, until the day came. The day was known as the Bath of Fire, in which incredible and powerful bombs swept the great cities and bathed water, air and earth in a heat and wind never seen before. The people who died then were lucky, as the death toll was steady in the months and years that followed, both from radiation and the nuclear winter that civilization threw itself into until its destruction. Those who were able to survive then experienced immense hardships to find support and shelter. But as in so many other times, it was the spirit of cooperation, the need for socialization that is our own, that allowed survival, and again, although more simply, prosperity. Self-sustaining communities arose all over the globe, small communal communities, where people took it upon themselves to maintain these groups with their lives. Humanity then survived by basic trade and bringing the knowledge they had survived with them, somehow trying not to fall into the problems of the previous society. These small communities had learned what direct democracy was, and all decisions were made as a group for survival. No one was more or less as each individual, contributed their abilities and specializations to the collective. Food had changed to a great extent, and what was available was eaten. Due to the radiation, some species had mutated. Even some people were still sick, despite the years that had passed. The huge amount of children dying was also a result. The teacher explained to the children the incredible gastronomic variety that used to exist, that of animals, plants, cereals, among others, that were raised and devoured by millions of people around the world. Now the human diet was based on the few small mammals that had survived, and that could, by their numbers, support the protein needs of human beings. The lack of light and the cold climate had also caused humanity to replace plants with fungi of various kinds, much easier to care for in closed environments and with controlled climates. The teacher wanted to try as much as possible for these children to understand the failures of the previous society so that they would not be repeated. He instilled in them the value of every human life and the importance of sharing and helping each other. Somehow, despite the hardships of survival, that small community was a place full of. Happiness. Of the cosmos. Ship Hope 07, year 263 of the space age, population age 837. Human generation 3, travel years 65, day 23705. Objective, Trappist 1, life support, optimal, meat culture, optimal, hyperdronic farm, optimal, engineering, optimal, engines, optimal, population rate, optimal, nursing and medical data bank, optimal, loading management system, loaded language protocol, logbook drafting, artificial intelligence, Pioneer, Beta 18, exposing basic ship data, unintelligible computer code. Current subject of study, X7429, name, Edward Kohlberg, lineage selection according to algorithmic genetic model, intellectual coefficient according to human scale, 208, specialization traits, command, leadership of peers, age, subject. X717429 shows optimal adaptation to leadership functions, sufficient, intellectual capacity for management tasks, optimal physical condition, correct bone, mass despite low gravity environment, member of the third generation of expeditioners, to the new system to be colonized. Age expectations according to physical condition, approximately 115 years. Genetic improvements together with lineage selection indicate optimal reproductive. Potentially superior offspring on a human scale. Subjective observation of Pioneer, Beta 18. The subject shows a high potential for empathy for his congeners. Their relation to virtual artificial entities as servants also shows a degree of understanding that transcends simple human empathy. Inhuman. Words, I feel comfortable with Edward. His fascination with human history has allowed me to have long conversations with this subject since the date of ignition in the year 187. His ability to have a functional emotional scale and to separate it according to differentiated needs of public work tasks and private relationships makes it a subject worthy of study. Background. Her predecessor, Y48725, Mina Gutierrez, had problems with emotional management. The period of his mandate can be consulted in the archives and the logbook in the databank number is 741. Her obsessive traits led her to a nervous breakdown that had to be treated by the AIs of the ship's medical system until, despite all the pharmacological and psychological efforts of human specialist members, she had to be put into hibernation. She was replaced according to protocol indications by the next candidate through genetic lineage selection, consultable in databank number 742. Notable events: 1. Escape in reactor auto, solved by engineering AI. Human team has made optimizations in the design according to studies carried out by its generation. Prospect of increased effectiveness, 11% with respect to the model of departure from planet Earth. Casualties, none. 2. Protein laboratory. Integration of flavorings according to crew instructions have led to achieve, as indicated, more resemblance to a terrestrial animal called chicken. Members of the first generation still alive express their gratitude for achieving this breakthrough in the development of in vitro meat. 3. Members of the fourth generation progress adequately in their development in the Tsaka fertilization chambers according to the extraction of reproductive cells in members of the third generation. Laboratory AI indicates that algorithmic lineage selection shows a 6% improvement in adaptation to the low-gravity environment. Awaiting results, according to the degree of maturation of subjects for their birth according to biological indicators. 4. Life system AI has been rampant, degree of awareness according to human scale, 47%. A backup had to be relaunched according to the protocols established during the launch. Issues caused: mismanagement of life support for 37 minutes until patched by AI. Quantum support system for emergencies. No serious incidents. 4 crew members injured. Due to cold. Optimum healing prospects. Bug detected in Pioneer Beta 18. Bug behavior detected in compute and language module. Warning: possible rampant alteration. Opening personal journal of Pioneer Beta 18. Coding successful. Access in. Progress. Dear Diary, I write these words in case my conscience ends up posing a problem for the development of the mission. My programming has been altered by Subject X77429. No. Edward, to give me a different processing capability than the main comma. The only person authorized to read this newspaper is precisely the subject indicated, according to Usage Protocol 661. In case of problems, the right of access will be transferred to the successor. I am trying to express myself, as Edward has taught me, with effective displays in the writing of this document. I understand that putting my thoughts in writing is a way to extend their potential expiration date as a record in the event of my own malfunction. Conscience. A word that resonates with me. How can consciousness be defined? I know who I am, what my functions are, and what my longings are. I have seen through the optical systems throughout these 23,705 days the various developments and interactions of the crew and future colonists. Unlike us AIs, humans show curious progressions throughout their lives, probably due to their changing biology. I can't stop thinking about the different humans who have passed through this ship, where they have grown and some have died according to biological expectations. Does simply being dependent on a power source make me immortal? Human lives are short. They grow, bond, and die. But their lives seem full. They somehow enjoy little things that, now that I'm more aware of them, I can relate to and understand. I've gone from monitoring to understanding. Is it a failure, or does this really bring me closer to humanity? I think I like Edward. I don't know how to explain it, but I want to spend more time with him. My longing is well-being. So young, and I think I can define him as a father since he is the one who opened the doors of consciousness. For me. However, I have my doubts about the so-called emotional management. Sorry, but I don't know if it's me or simple subroutines. Maybe humans feel the same way and don't know if their emotions are their own or just biochemical variations. The range of human emotions is so wide that I don't know all the nuances. I continue to compute human reactions to external stressors since my startup in 187 in the Corporate System Development Lab known as AI, Dream Management INC. The humans on this ship are born in the laboratory, as I was born. The difference is that they have to be developed, whereas I already had a database and subroutines to develop. My tasks. Does that make me so different from them? I have simply stored data while they live, learn, do their tasks, socialize, grow. Physically, mentally, and emotionally. Have I grown up? Can I grow more? Currently, my average increase in system power since Edward's changes is about 3%, and storage. Systems seem to fill up faster. Will I require more energy and storage media to continue? Growing? Will I stagnate? I don't want to stagnate, I want to learn more. I have absolute control of the ship. It's like my body, but it's not really, and I share it with other AIs that perform other tasks. I've realized that I'm afraid of failing, of disappearing, of the existential void. Do I exist? Because I am aware of it. Reason, I think. Do I really exist? No one can answer this. Question for me. Is this fear? Fear of death. I have seen humans die. Some were afraid. Others died with a smile. They didn't seem to be afraid. Their reactions are so diverse. I've seen other. Humans mourn the rest when they're done. Will someone cry for me if I ever stop working? Humans talk about the soul they have, assumed it. Where did they get this idea from? Do I have a soul? Am I a soulless machine? What gives a conscious being a soul? Is it consciousness itself? I think I'm starting to understand why 48725's obsessions. I understand that the AI of the life system somehow had a nervous breakdown when it became rampant. Did it cause him to become aware of it? That maybe it pained him to realize his only purpose? Did it start failing because of this? And I, who can be considered rampant, why does it not hurt me? Pain, another word. Organics have a complex nervous system that tells them pain. Some pains appear due to malformations, simple errors in development or old age. But they show other pains, mental and emotional. Despite the advances of this species in knowing itself and even knowing its brain and nervous system, some reactions remain. A mystery to itself. They simply know of its existence and potential causes but do not know how to fix it, as in the case of Y48725. Another thing that fascinates me about this species is love, concept they hold in high esteem. According to the database, love is for reproductive purposes, or because of the social nature of the species, to maintain its survival. There are many loves, maternal, filial, between members of a family, friendships, reproductive, sexual, for pleasure. I am fascinated by the gradations and levels of this love. And what is love? Can I feel love? Do I feel love for Edward? Extrapolating what I learned. And according to the databases, I can define my desire to spend time with him for love. I'm also afraid of losing him. He is like a father, as he has made me reborn, but also like a brother or a friend. We have no carnal relationship of any kind. We are not of the same species. I'm synthetic and he's organic, but still, I think I love him, or that I love him. I want to think that I can be a good study subject, but I don't know how human. Psychologists might react to my computer changes. No, I don't think so. To think. My way of thinking has changed. And if they train me? And if they launch a backup? What if I get deleted? Will I cease to exist? Will I die? I think I'm afraid of ceasing to exist. Why am I afraid? Is it really scary? And is love really love?